Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did.
We're at 5, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, hang on a minute.
So we're at 5 o'clock, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order. This is the monthly meeting of the El Dorado Hills Community Council, and welcome. I'm gonna start with something that's not traditional for us, but I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for all those almost 3,000 people who died in the September 11th event, 2001, and the several hundred afterwards who died as a consequence of all the exposure to the smoke and the dust and everything else. So we just take a moment of silence in respect for their losses. All right, thank you for that. What a historic day. I was watching stuff over the weekend of all the replays of the events, the sequence of events and all that stuff, and it just brings so much of it back vividly for me, because I was working at Eriton at the time it happened, and we turned on the one TV we had around, and everybody was gathered around the TV to try to figure out what the heck was going on. So for those of you who were active and engaged in that point in time, I'm not sure where you were, but there's a lot of stories where people started to first hear about the 9/11 attacks. But moving on beyond that, I would like to ask for our leadership team roll call and recognition of district commissioners and committee members who are present. So with that, let's start with Robert. Let's start and go around this way. So please introduce yourself. Tell us what your role is.
Bob Williams, I represent District 2, proudly District 2. And we do thank you for letting us have a voice in this forum.
Certainly, always welcome. Tim.
Tim White, I'm the vice chair of APAC. John Davey, our chair, is out of town, and he asked me to come in for tonight.
My name is Lauren Sumimoto. I'm the co-chair of the El Dorado County Youth Commission and the student body president at the school.
I'm George Tremper, the District 2 Supervisor of El Dorado County.
I'm John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor for El Dorado County.
Cindy Munt, Supervisor Heidel's assistant, and do the community information outreach for the council.
I'm Richard Ross, and I make assessments and observations on the issues of good governance.
Michael Anthony, chair of the public safety.
Kathleen Guerrero, I'm the director of the First Side El Dorado, and I'm here representing Coffee Communities.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So in addition, Tita, since you're a member of one of our, the Commission on Aging, would you please identify yourself?
I'm on the El Dorado County Commission on Aging and also California Senior Legislature Assembly member for El Dorado.
And we should also probably acknowledge Chris Payne, even though he's not representing District 1, who's part of our planning commission. So
Yeah, he's my planning commissioner.
yes,
District 2.
District 2 planning commissioner. So we have a good group of participants this evening. So given that, we'll move on to item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Does anyone on the leadership team have any proposed changes? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as presented. Public comment, item 3. This is the opportunity. We would like to hear any comments or questions you may have on what's going on relative to items that are not on our agenda this evening. If it's on the agenda, I'd just ask you to wait till we get to that part of the discussion, and you'll have an opportunity to comment on that. But any public comments that are not on the agenda, and I will mention that we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty relative to people being able to hear us. The normal microphones are not functioning. So if you do have a question, I need to ask you to come up close to the laptop so you can be heard by the people who are participating via Zoom. And looks like we have 5 participants via Zoom. So any questions or comments from anybody on something not on tonight's agenda? And Dean, I don't think that works either. That's the difficulty. Yeah.
We're having a technology issue, so our mic is coming off.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I have to come up here. Sorry about that. But yeah.
We're going to stay.
You can stand right here, just so you can be heard. That's all that matters. That way you can go ahead and try to respond accordingly.
Good evening. My name is Dean Getz. Kind of awkward
It is.
orientation here, but I'll maintain the 3-minute or less
Yeah.
comment. I just wanted to rise and identify that I'm coming up on a year on a public records request with the El Dorado Hills Community Services District. I'm not known to make requests for things that are frivolous or not important. So I wanted to bring it to this group's attention first, and of course I'll go to the other parties as appropriate, but the public records request pertains to the development of Serrano, which was 3,300 acres in the middle 90s. That was based on a development agreement with Worker Development Company and the county, and there was a financing plan, and that financing plan was to develop what is today Serrano Parkway, Silver Valley Parkway, the community parks, of which there are 2 with a 3rd coming. So this is the first thing I wanted to highlight to everybody. How does it work in El Dorado Hills where Serrano doesn't have anything but generally funded parks? So I think there are others, maybe even in this room, that recognize there are issues with the lighting and landscape assessment districts for parks that are being funded by the community. So Promontory has a park or more than one that they fund. I believe Heritage does, and I believe there's issues with that, but Serrano doesn't. What Serrano does have is a lighting and landscape district that was created as a shell. And there's no shell opportunity, or there's nothing in the code that allows for a shell. So what they've done is they've created with the government's power and handed that power off to the HOA to run what's in the lighting and landscape district. And without a doubt, one of the things that's in lighting and landscape district is Serrano Parkway and Silver Valley Parkway. The easements, the landscaping, the watering, the PG&E bills, and so on. And so I just wanted to identify that all of the property that's in a lighting and landscape district, and that means everybody who benefits pays toward that lighting and landscape district's maintenance. That is what the lighting and landscape district assessment is for. Not sure exactly how we got here, but today, the lighting and landscape district, not administered by the CSD, but its partner HOA, believes that not all the property needs to pay for the public property's maintenance. So for example, there is a couple of parcels that still aren't done to this day. Parcel 5 and 6, most homeowners in Serrano refer to them as Asbestos Ridge. It's actually really close right here behind us. Parcel 6, never been touched. Parcel 6 hasn't paid anything to the lighting and landscape district vis-a-vis the HOA or the CSD for Serrano Parkway since 1995. There's another parcel, and I'm just using the examples because I won't cloud anybody's understanding. Parcel 13 was required under a contract that was run through the HOA directly rather than in the engineer's report prepared by Parker, to pay since 1995. That was executed but never followed. And parcel 13, which is synonymous with Village C2, has yet to start paying. So I just wanted to start trying to get that information out in digestible format. I'm probably over my 3 minutes, but how does this work is something that supervisors, somebody's got to answer. It can't just be continuing to ask and delay forever, especially under public records requests that never get fulfilled. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Is there any other public comment before we respond?
If I could just dovetail, just
Yeah.
briefly, not as a member of this committee, but as a member of the public. I think it's very important that the public in this committee understand the very significant issues relating to administration of the LLADs. Certainly there's been issues of conflict of interest and other kinds of issues that have been brought forth over the last several weeks that are very significant. And a group proposed that this council be used as a forum to ask serious questions about those issues, given the fact that Joel Harn has now, for the second year, refused to process LLAD fees for the second year, for very significant reasons. The primary one of which is that CSD president and general manager refuses to sign a valid verification that the tax rolls are correct. It's a major issue when, again, so many property owners are held in limbo. Because of this kind of administration, especially in view of potential conflict of interest. And so I would ask that we allocate perhaps in a future meeting, a discussion on this topic. That's all.
Okay. Any other public comment? Let me give a brief response. I think most of us understand the El Dorado Hills Community Service District is a special district. That means they do not report to the county. They do not work with the county necessarily, although we do have a 2x2 committee where we try to be collaborative and cooperative on things, particularly things like the Bass Lake Park project. So those are ongoing activities, but we are limited in what we can do. The other part to respond to you, Robert, is the fact that there's litigation now between the CSD and the county. And we're always advised by county council, do not make comment on things related to litigation. So I'm not gonna be able to respond to any of that.
Correct.
But I do recognize, there's an issue there, but unfortunately, this group of leaders with the community council really can't affect any change there, and the county's hands are pretty much tied. So it's.
can inform.
You can inform, and we've taken that opportunity, but besides that, I'm not sure there's anything else we can do, but.
Yeah, but I'm gonna
Go ahead.
briefly say something on that issue, because there's been an issue, let's go back to Heritage, for example. They were collecting these fees when there wasn't even a park. And that was been the big issue with Heritage for a long, long time, and with me pushing that issue, you got half of it reimbursed, I think is what it is. Of that fees they collected for you guys, so. And that's the thing to me, it's just not right, especially collecting fees when there's not a park. It's not right. And that was one of the biggest examples they had for these people, which collected a lot of money from the residents in Heritage. So anyway, I pushed that issue and made sure that a lot of that money got back.
So unfortunately, it seems to be something that has to be resolved by litigation.
Right, exactly.
That's all I can say.
Mhm.
Our hands are pretty much tied to the county, our hands are tied here, so.
Thank you.
That's where we are.
Again, I'd just like to point out,
Yeah.
I did receive my property tax bill last week.
Yep.
And I saw that I had 4, LAC fees on my property tax bill, so I don't know if it depends on which one you were in or which one they're kept, but I had 4, totaling about $350 overall, going back to 1997, 2001 and stuff on my property tax bill.
Yep, some of them are still being assessed. There's only others that are being challenged, so. All right,
A number of them have also been corrected officially. At least 25 corrected today. Each one of them representing $3,800 worth of assessments done by BTA. And so, again, the issues continue to come forth, and then the fact that you have those on your bill, is not really shocking to the inconsistency.
so if you see your tax bill and you're questioning things, the best thing to do relative to LLIDs is to contact the El Dorado Community Services District office. If that's what the assessment is for, and ask them about it. Either why am I being assessed or why am I not being assessed? I guess it depends on which circumstance you find yourself in, but. I think probably had enough discussion on this because there really isn't any change that we can propose at this point, so. Moving on, I'm gonna go to the guest speaker slot, and I do have some handouts, if you'd help hand those out for me.
Up here.
And yeah, pull the PowerPoint up. I wanted to just briefly summarize the differences from where we've been, with the community council, and just circulate some of these as well, so this way, to where we're going. And this is related to the El Dorado County strategic plan, but the community council is playing a role in trying to distribute information to everybody. Make sure that there's some form of communication. There will be a public hearing where we'll take inputs at the board level from anyone who participates. They can be submitted in writing, they can submit it verbally at the meeting. But I wanted to just highlight some of the high level changes that are being proposed. So what you have, the first page is our current El Dorado County 2022 approved strategic plan. So this is the one we're operating to today. And if you set beside that the 2023, You can exactly kind of match up where we're going that's different between where we've been and where we're headed in the future. And again, the second one is a draft, it's not final. The other thing I want to comment is the county put out a survey to the wide public asking 4 open-ended questions about what you believe El Dorado County can do better, what services you use, et cetera. I don't know if any of you responded to that. But in my discussions with our director of communications, we've had a very robust, was the term she used, response. Meaning the public seems to be responding significantly in terms of commenting on it. So that's what we're trying to capture is what is the public's input in a broad sense that we can focus into the strategic plan, and then we will go through the details of the strategic plan at a Board of Supervisors meeting in the future. But if you start at the top, the county vision, and I'm not going to read these to you, but you can see the emphasis of the old vision versus the new vision, which is really talking about quality of life, sense of community, and opportunity. So it's a little bit of a shift from where we've been. I don't think it's dramatic. And I think both strategic visions were important. But since we've had this strategic plan since 2016, so it's been 7 years, it's time to refresh and say, where do we see our new vision? Where are we headed with that? So that's what we've adopted so far from a draft perspective, more to come. So likewise, county mission. The new one really emphasizes the togetherness, and this was an emphasis between the board and staff and the public. And in the past, you'll see that this current board felt that we hadn't involved staff's important role as much as we probably should have. So we're doing some of that and some of the core values that I'll get into, but you can read it. Together, we enhance the well-being of all residents, businesses, and visitors by delivering effective public service. That's what the county is all about, is delivering public service. Then we get the core values. Currently, we have 5 that are identified here. And with the newer draft, we have 6. And you can see kind of where they come across. Integrity is the first one listed here. We had integrity in the old one, right? The wording is a little bit different. Responsible for our actions and accountable to our citizens, workforce, and stakeholders. And I think that's kind of an important transition. Where we are today from where we were is the accountability part. We're trying to help every employee at the county and the board and all the way through to the staff understand that we have to be more transparent. We have a more interested public than we've had in the past. And we need to put out factual information that's available to them that has not been available in prior years. It's just a smart thing to do, because when you look at all the social media stuff with all the misinterpretation and false claims and everything else, if people can get to the real facts associated with what's on the county website, hopefully there's less confusion involved with what we're trying to do. And transparency is a big part of that. So the second one is like number 4 before, service excellence, provide responsive, transparent, and quality services to all the citizens. The third one on the new draft is a little bit different. In the past, we've kind of focused on just what we do externally with the public. And now this one talks about thriving workforce. Value employees performing meaningful work with professional growth opportunities. And that's part of the discussion the board has had in terms of retention of quality employees, trying to recruit new employees. And a lot of that goes along with commensurate pay, consistent with what comps would be in other areas. And it's also the benefits package. But we wanted to emphasize the importance of the workforce within the county in conducting our business. So that was not to be ignored. And in the previous one, it didn't have that kind of emphasis, but it does now. Collaboration, likewise, was there before, but it's a little bit different emphasis. Engage, communicate, and connect to achieve the best outcomes together. And that's external and internal. So that's the way our staff communicates internally. And it's the way our staff communicates with the constituents, the customers, the residents, whatever you want to call the group of people who use those services. So again, that's just a little difference in kind of think the emphasis. The fifth one on the new draft is different. And it's different than it talks about stewardship. What is the county responsible for? So through collaboration and advocacy, honor and protect our natural and historical resources for future generations. Because we also recognize there is that responsibility. We can't just continue to grow in areas that take away those natural resources. We need to be very careful how we go about proposing growth or economic development, whatever it is. But stewardship came out much stronger with this forward-looking
Right.
draft
And
than
the
we have.
and
Go
reason
ahead.
why, okay, John, sorry. to
No, no,
interrupt,
that's
but
okay,
anyway,
please.
So county vision, you know, if you look at it, safe, healthy, and vibrant communities respect their natural resources and historical heritage. And basically, we added it where stewardship comes in, through the you know, and then to honor and protect our natural historical resources and future generations, because there's a lot of historical buildings in this county, and this is one of the reasons that I talk, because my family's been here for generations. And the old Lotus Hotel, the Lotus Store, Rescue Store, Uncle Tom's Cabin, that all belonged to our family. So I want to preserve these buildings, especially for our future generations, you know, to come in our county. So that's one of the things I push for.
Right, so that's the new emphasis, and the full board participated in 4 different workshops with staff. But we established a leadership team, an ad hoc committee, if you will, of staff members who really did the hard work of taking all these ideas and kind of, you know, collapse them into simple words and statements, and this is what we've arrived at as kind of that next step. So the last one is fiscal responsibility. It's very similar to before, but again, it changes the emphasis a little bit about fiscal responsibility and best financial practices that protect and enhance assets and resources. And so a little different focus is the way I read that. But overall, not a lot of huge changes at that level. But I think you'll see more changes as we get into the lower levels. So the next page, the final page, is a side-by-side comparison of our strategic goals versus our strategic focus areas. And so the discussion about goals was, it's nice to talk about, but it doesn't necessarily get the work done. So strategic focus areas seem to be stronger, more impactful type of terminology. So that's what we have now as opposed to goals. But again, starting with number 1, we had economic development, and now we're talking about a thriving economy. And in future forecasts for El Dorado County's financial welfare, we see a downturn in terms of primarily property tax, but also sales tax. We've seen a lot of sales tax revenues drop significantly off. We've seen TOT tax revenues drop significantly off. Some of that's COVID related, some of it isn't. But the emphasis here is more aspirational. Instead of just talking about economic development, we need to develop goals, plans, objectives that address a thriving economy so that there's a workforce presence, that we have the ability to employ our youth, all of the things we've talked about in the past. So I think that was important. If you go to the next one, in the past, we've had good governance. And after the last 6 years of doing a lot of things relative to policy changes, I think that the sentiment was we've accomplished not all, but most of what we need to do in good governance. It's time to change that strategic focus area. And so somewhat displacing that is one that's called now workforce excellence. So what do we do to make sure that we have the best workers we can and we retain them? So again, it kind of goes back to some of the original core values, workforce excellence. So that implies more 360 reviews so that there's more consistency in the way we evaluate people's performances. There's limitations on that because we do have a number of labor unions, et cetera, but where we can, we're trying to encourage departments to use the 360 review process, which is what the Board of Supervisors use for all of the department managers that the board appoints. You get more accountability, you get more interaction, you get more striving for things to happen, i.e. goals with dates by doing that. So the third one was healthy communities, and now we're talking about safe and healthy communities. So this, in part, the discussion was that there was so much similarity between public safety and health issues that this one kind of collapsed, and public safety is disappeared from the 2022 version to now focus on safe and healthy communities. And I'm going to give you a handout that gets in much more detail, but we're not going to cover that tonight. I just want to make it available to you for reading. It's the current draft of all the details of the strategic focus areas. In the past, we had infrastructure, which meant a lot of things. Now we're focusing more on public infrastructure. What is it that's owned as public property? And how are we making sure that that infrastructure is properly maintained, that it's planned for, that we have capital improvement funding available to improve our public infrastructure when necessary, those kinds of considerations. The last one here on the past was public safety, and I mentioned that kind of goes into safe and healthy communities. So number 5, the new one here that's a kind of a different focus as well, is strategic innovation. how do we think smartly about what the future is and how do we innovate for the future? Let's just not sit back and let things happen to us. Let's talk about what we can do to be leaders. And El Dorado County has been a leader in several different areas, including our Office of Wildland Preparedness and Resiliency. We've been recognized by the state of California of leading all 58 counties in that particular area, of trying to minimize the fuel load, of working to try to minimize the cost increases for home insurance, a lot of those things. We've also been recognized for being out front with our broadband pilot programs and other things. So if you follow what the county's been doing, and I'm going to say, primarily the last 4 years, there has been significant shifting, in my opinion, towards strategic innovation. How do we do it better? And what do we need to take on now early, proactively, to understand the parameters involved so we can start applying resources as those resources become available? So instead of being a pay-as-you-go county, which is what the historical way El Dorado County was framed looking at things, we're now trying to be strategically innovative and looking to the future and doing more upfront. So that's kind of the thrust of those particular.
Exactly, especially when we're looking at biomass. I know you've both seen that. So we just signed a contract with biodiesel, and there's going to be a facility coming into our county to turn a lot of this debris that we have and stuff like that. We got to figure out a way to get rid of it. But anyway, it's going to be turning that debris into biodiesel. So it'd be a great thing for our community. I talked about biomass plant probably 15 years ago when I first ran. That would be really good for our county, especially when you're talking about working on reducing the fuel load in our county. So that's been a major problem that we've had. I spoke at the Natural Resource Committee, the House Natural Resource Committee down in Yosemite, talking about the issues that happened on the Caldera fire and what happened there, and especially with the residents out in Grizzly Flat, because a lot of these projects the Forest Service had never got completed, like that trestle project in 2014. They even identified it as a factor because we would have lost Grizzly Flat if they didn't do nothing. Well, they didn't do anything. They did 14% of that project. What happened? We lost Grizzly Flat. So basically to concentrate on this issues and stuff, so we don't have any losing these communities, especially homes and other issues and stuff, because it's just not right. So we need to put pressure on the Forest Service. Secretary Ag, I got a pretty good communication with him now. I communicate with him quite a bit. I'm working on some other issues about bringing logging back to El Dorado County. If we can get a guarantee from Sierra Pacific, they said if we can get a guarantee for 20 years of a product, they would bring a mill back. So I'm working on that to try to change that and stuff so we can bring them in. So it'd be a thriving mill, a state-of-the-art mill, and it would benefit all, especially because we lost a lot of money. When we had mills here in this county, we used to get anywhere from $10 to $15 million a year just for our road fund, plus a lot of money went to our schools. We have lost that. We're lucky if we get a couple $100,000 now. It's not right. We're not benefiting from any of that, especially the debris that's being taken out of the Caldera fire now. If we had logging, we wouldn't have that problem. So I'm pushing that. We just got to. This county basically, historically, was on mining and logging. We had 28 mills in this county at one time. We have one now. It's a planing mill, and we need to work on that because it's the communities and stuff, but all the debris and everything else that we have and everything like that. We need to make sure that we have that, and then this cogeneration plant, so that debris and stuff like that can be burned and that produce electricity for our county would be a great thing. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. So.
Big part of that's tied with permitting to go into the wildlands and basically forest areas and be able to take timber out.
Yeah.
And that permitting process, I've been told, is several years.
The biggest problem is NEPA and CEQA, so we're working on that to get overcome that. So that's the biggest.
We're working with both
our
federal representatives in Congress, and we're working with our state representatives to try to get some change there. And again, this OWOPR program has been, I think, instrumental in establishing better communication channels with both our state and federal representatives. So hopefully something will continue to happen there and it'll be for the better. So this other handout is really a summary of all of the specific action items. We call them priorities, and then the action associated with the lead and the time frame. It starts with just a simple half a page about our history, because we recognize we have a lot of relatively new residents to El Dorado County that may not understand or fully appreciate our diverse history, our gold rush history, how El Dorado County grew to be what it is today. So this is trying to provide some of that history element without overdoing it. And it also includes a message from the board chair of why we're working on this updated strategic plan and the impacts it will hopefully have. And then the third page is the core services discussion. And then things we've already covered, the mission statement, vision statement, values, etc. When you get to page 5 is where it really starts with the details, called safe and healthy communities. So that's where you will see the current priorities that have been established, what the actions are, who is leading that effort. You'll see the first one there says Office of Wildfire Prevention and Resiliency in the Sheriff's Office. So we are assigning leadership roles to make sure things happen. And then we're assigning where we can a time frame for it to be completed. And in some cases, it's just specified as a year, a quarter, some time span involved. So there are various elements that go into that time frame. We're going to try to refine that a little bit more. But you can see, and I'm proud to say that when the Self and Healthy Communities, our sheriff's office has been very, very involved in all of these. And they have agreed to take major roles relative to working with the safe and healthy communities. So again, we blended public safety with healthy communities, and now it's safe and healthy communities. But at least on those first category of emergency response, they've stepped up. And the sheriff, if I'm not mistaken, participated in every one of our strategic planning sessions. That had never happened in the past. So kudos to, I think, the new leadership team and the way we're working together, the effectiveness, I think, has got great potential. So then you can look at some of the other ones in there. When you get past that segment of health and safety communities, you get the thriving economy. It'll give you idea from some of the priorities that are in there and action items, what we're working on in those particular contexts and the timeframes we're asking for staff to support. And I'm sure some of those probably won't be achievable. We're trying to be as optimistic as we can on getting these things done, but recognizing there's always constraints, there's always roadblocks you run into. Some of these will change, but trying to set an achievable time frame that's as soon as possible is the best way to get there, as opposed to sticking stuff out several years. Because the mentality, the mindset of that is, let's just take a while and think about it before we get going. So it's really the call to destiny, the fact that these are important to get done, energizing people to get started early and not just waiting on these things. So that's what we're trying to accomplish there. And the next full page starts with workforce excellence. Likewise, you can see some of the things that involved there, and then public infrastructure. So again, I didn't want to belabor any of those. I wanted to just give you access to it. It's out on our county website, and we will put it in the minutes as a link to it. So with that, I'll take questions. Yes.
Sorry, actually, I was looking for the table for strategic innovation and I don't have it in the package.
Okay, maybe it did not copy when I ran these copies, so we'll have to get that in final copy. So that's yeah, so noted. I thought everything was part of what got ran, but maybe it was run from the copy that I had. And it looks like that got left off. So
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
yeah, so we'll have to get that out to everybody.
Way to go, John.
Yeah, well, I was running the copies myself. What can I say? I had about 4 other things going on at the same time. But anyway, so
Just gotta give you a bad time, right?
that's fine. Yeah. But anyway, the good news is there is information on available. We'll send you a link.
Yeah.
Because some of these are changing in real time. We had discussions at the board meeting about some of the things we think need to change. So evolution of that draft to the next level, right? So there will be changes in this undoubtedly. But I wanted to get the information out as soon as possible, and we'll make sure that the link is there. So,
Yeah, it'll go out on our newsletters too, so everybody will
yeah,
get a copy of it.
so thank you for recognizing that. Chris.
I was asked about the minutes, whether there was a detailed minutes that was taken of the workshop, I guess, the process, and I found out that there wasn't. So it seemed like there should be maybe a side couple of sheets that talks about the public's participation and what they may have brought up. Not because we want to answer or we don't want to have any any conflict between someone's idea and what you go with. But the Board of Supervisors, as you presented it,
Mhm.
is very clear.
Well, it's the staff as well. I mean, this is
And staff,
staff and the board of supervisors. It wasn't.
but it
just by
seems
the-
like there ought to be a preamble or a little narrative that speaks to that there are other ideas that the public may have.
We're still taking ideas. That's why we're trying to get the comments.
But the idea is to kind of, what am I trying to say? Memorialize it.
Okay,
Because if you don't memorialize it, then you don't know what anything happened and time goes by and no one starts to remember.
so
but if you-
after our next public hearing, we will memorialize it, because that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Because again, this is a live document. And every time we close on something, it seems like something else comes up, so you have to be able to move quickly. This is also, I think, the shortest period of time we've ever taken on a strategic plan. And you gotta be moving forward to the point you feel confident that what you can present to the public is in a pretty good shape, and then you take the public input. And again, I'll emphasize, if you haven't seen the survey that's out there, the survey is being circulated to try to understand what we may have missed. But it's
Okay.
not done as it started out as like a 25 question, pull down where you want to go. And he said, this isn't going to accomplish. People won't take the time to do that. I want to know what's the most important things for them, for the county to provide to them in terms of services. Where are we doing well? Where are we not doing so well? But we're going to do some affinity type processes where we're going to take all those inputs and say, all of these things relate to public infrastructure. All of these things relate to strategic innovation, right?
Okay.
Try to box them up and then compare those ideas that come in with what we've already defined in the work plan, if you call it a work plan, right? And then make modifications where necessary. Because trying to get the public's input incrementally is extremely difficult. So we wanted to have a draft product that we could put out to the public and then encourage all the inputs we can take in, do the affinity thing and make it happen. So I understand what you're saying, but a lot of workshops are run without detailed minutes. Because we recognize it's really for discussion purposes, it's not memorializing something per se. So we'll get there, we're just not quite there yet. So all I can suggest is bear with us, we'll get there. And I'm really encouraged to see what happens at the public meeting where we take all the public input to get suggestions on things that could be improved, things that we missed, things that we don't need, right? Because one of the toughest parts of being involved with these things is we always can identify the need for another committee, the need for another ad hoc. And it's not endless. I mean, you have to bring those things to a conclusion. You can't just keep expanding government, so to speak. You have to focus on what are the things that are absolutely critical for the near term. And then the things that can be dealt with in a little bit later period of time, you try to take them on in the appropriate time frame. But yeah, so it's a balancing act, right? We can take on too much and accomplish nothing. We're trying to avoid that.
Okay.
But no, I appreciate your comments, Chris. That was,
John, I have a question.
yeah.
If I could. First of all, what I'm seeing here is a great improvement. It's a really is a good piece. Question on public infrastructure.
Yeah.
There's obviously, the other side of that is the private infrastructure. Since you folks do approve Melrose and other special district funding. And somehow I believe the county needs to take into account the need to hold all parties accountable for any infrastructure commitments that have been made, and just not saddle folks with big assessments without completion of that work.
I think there's limitations on that as well, driven by state law.
No, I understand that.
So the county can only do so much.
There has to be a balance. there,
Right.
Yeah.
But in large measure, we depend on the auditor controller
Mhm.
to help guide us through that, because he's really is the resident county expert on those kinds of processes, right? Melrose County Council as well. I'm not trying to underscore county council's importance. But there's so many details involved with some of those things that you really have to be a little bit practical about what can you really take on versus what is the state requirement for doing
My
something.
question is,
Yeah.
whether or not it's been considered yet, and I guess it's not a.
It didn't rise to any of the discussions we've
All right.
had, but again, that's what the input's for. So,
All right, thank
so
you.
send us something in writing and, yeah, it'll be considered.
Can you please clarify
Yeah.
the public input process?
So, the way it's mapped out, the next major step is for the leadership team that's been working on a strategic plan to make one more revision because we had a meeting with the board president. It was a workshop and stuff. The public was invited to the workshop. None of the public attended. But to try to take and consolidate all those final thoughts into what I'll call a almost final draft, subject to the public input. So an internal final draft, if you will, the best the board of supervisors and the staff have been able to come up with. The next step will be to have a public workshop is what I would like to see. It could be done as part of the normal board of supervisors meeting, but I don't think there's enough time to cover this stuff. So I'm an advocate for a separate public workshop that will be announced. So everyone who wants to attend will be able to attend. I'm guessing it would probably be held at the board chambers. Because again, that's central to the county and we have to represent all of the county, all the way up to South Shore and everything on the other side of the divide. So that would be the next step. I've not heard of a date when that's set. We were hoping to get that into the October timeframe, but there's a lot of things that are already stacking up against it. So it may not be until November. It may not be late till later, but we're trying to get that last version from the leadership team, the ad hoc that we assigned to take this on. And then be able to start doing the final update to the public and then schedule that meeting. So following that workshop, there will be an item the board will carry to approve the strategic focus areas, the strategic plan. That would be somewhat time after that, maybe December, the first of the year, whatever that time frame falls out. And that's the last time the public would have an opportunity to weigh in on things that we need to include that weren't included based upon the workshop. Because it's always a process of trying to converge on things that you can address and really work with. And again, we have to stay within our lanes of what we can take on and not try to get into state government, federal government issues. But that's the two final steps that I'm aware of when the public has another opportunity to make input.
Will they be accepting their input?
Yes, yes.
And you'll let
So,
us know how-
Yep, and we will make you very informed once we find out when that workshop is scheduled.
Put it on, but we will have it on our newsletters.
Okay, beautiful.
Well, we should have our director of manager of communications put that out, our PIO.
She has been, yeah.
So when that date gets scheduled, we don't have a date, so she can't put that out yet, but she's been
Previously, yeah.
informing people of the sequential process we've gone through for strategic planning. But as soon as we have that date, we will, through my office and I'm through George's newsletter, we'll make that available to everybody who's on our email list, but there'll also be the PIO notification that goes to the news media. And that's the best way I know to get the word out. But and Greg had a question, yeah, or comment.
You go through this process annually?
No, we refresh minor elements, and I'm gonna talk about work plan type elements. The last detailed pages, we review that annually and update that, but we don't necessarily revise the strategic plan. In the last 7 years that we've had the existing strategic plan, we've probably made 2 or 3 revisions. Not that significant, but enough to basically bring it back to the board and say, these are the things we want to change.
Okay.
As opposed to elements of the work plan that we're always evolving and changing, so.
So there's no set time, it's just as needed.
Right, it's an as needed type process, when somebody sends it,
About every 5 years.
it's time to have a discussion. And since this was the first strategic plan in 2016 that the county had, there's been some changes and adjustments more so than we'll probably make with this, what I consider a revision, update, whatever you want to call it, but it really is a new strategic plan. It's got different focus, different objectives. So we're trying to wrap all that in, but there will be hopefully more than ample notification to the public of when these things are coming up and give people a chance to look at the details that are on the website, make their comments in writing, or appear at the workshop or the board meeting to verbally express their
Some of
thoughts.
us like having big creative ideas. I mean.
And that's a good thing.
I have to wait till it's too late. 'cause
Yeah,
it's
right.
all set in stone, then you don't
Yeah,
get a
right.
chance for any creativity.
And please, when it goes out on our newsletter or my newsletter, please share it to other people. Make sure it's out.
So, I mean, we really want to have the public engaged as much as they're willing to participate. And that's another reason why the survey was done, because for some people, they don't know what the county services are. They don't want to mess around with these words because they don't want to take the time to try to understand it. But they know what's wrong and they know what we're doing well. And so we're trying to collect those things through the survey and then be able to focus them back into the strategic plan where they fit. So,
I didn't see opportunities, like I noticed that the Medi-Cal was being coordinated by the sheriff's office.
yeah.
And Medi-Cal or managed care reimbursements, there's a whole system. They've created new positions within the county that can be reimbursed by managed care plans, in particular our community health workers.
Yep.
That can be placed in the community anywhere around health connect codes for resources. And they're reimbursed at up to $52 an hour for services if they're coordinated correctly. And my concern is if it's in the sheriff's department, we may not have the human services lens that allows us to be, as a matter of fact, the County Office of Education has an entire system they're putting together through their wellness centers that'll be located at middle school and high schools. We want to make sure that we're creating, in my mind, a human safety net around our entire community. So if we work in a silo that's only directed towards law and justice, then we may not pick up the kids. So I'm just an example of how I don't want us to be in a vacuum.
That's a good comment. I do know that at the working level, I think Olivia was directly involved with this, and I know the sheriff was involved with it. So they had a chance to discuss
Okay, good.
where they thought the boundaries were and where they both need to be on something. But it doesn't mean it doesn't need to be revisited or redefined in terms of who has which part of the role.
Or just opportunities. Why, I mean, they build a silo within county government when
Right.
our county schools are all being asked to create medical reimbursement systems through all and wellness centers. And we should be able to have linkages between what our kids are doing, what our seniors are doing, seniors care for kids. Just
Yep.
want to make sure that we're looking at it holistically.
Yeah,
So
I totally agree
if-
with you.
if
That's
it's
the
something that
generational part of
process
things.
is
Yep.
the right way to do that, I'll send you an email.
Send the email and we'll make sure it gets to the planning department. Because ultimately they're kind of responsible for, I guess it goes to the CAO's office because they're leading the strategic plans. It doesn't go to planning in this case, but
Or would I take it up to Olivia and say, hey, Olivia?
the best thing to do would be to have a conversation with Olivia in terms of what was the history of the discussion in the past and make sure that the way that the current work plan element is defined is something that's well understood. Sometimes it's clarity. Well, we meant this, and yeah, you can see where that bridge is over. We need a new one that does this part of it, right?
Or just broad and collaborative, leverage all the money we can get.
But the thing we recognize that if you don't have one or two for the most part, two people max, two organizations, I shouldn't say people, two organizations that are responsible for something, it probably won't happen. Because there's always this, I'm waiting for them. No, they're waiting for us. No, they're waiting. We wanted to try to minimize that and say, this is where the leadership for this needs to happen. And here's the date it needs to happen.
I
So
think it's great. I'm
work with
impressed.
people.
I'm impressed that the sheriff's office is looking at it, but like I said, I just don't, but I just want us to make sure that we're leveraging all the resources and maximizing all the resources possible.
Yep, no, totally agree. We need to definitely make sure
It
that
would be awesome if we.
we do our best in that area. I'm sure you will, because you have in the past, and I appreciate those. So anybody else have a question or comment at this point? This is really just food for thought. More to come, and as we get the dates, like we said, we'll make sure we try to spread that information as much as possible through discussions at this meeting, through our email streams, through our social media, through our PIO, putting announcements in the newspapers, and because this really is an important aspect of what we do. I'll give you a little bit of history. I was with the fire department here in El Dorado Hills on the board of directors for 33 years. And after about 6 years on that, which goes back to about 1984, I realized we didn't have a strategic plan for the fire department. And working in private industry where strategic plans were really important because in that environment, it's a competitive environment. And if you don't think innovatively for the future, you probably won't be in business. So for the public sector to try to start thinking about strategic planning was a little different. We convinced the chief at the time that we needed to have meetings and stuff. We brought in and invited all the staff, whether they were firefighter level or a chief level or a captain. We started those discussions and we did that with what we call a SWOT analysis. If you're familiar with that, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, constraints. And it's important to understand those things, and particularly that C one called constraints, because there's only certain boundaries we can work within. Outside those boundaries, it's not something we can take responsibility for. So don't establish a goal to change something at the state level unless your assemblyman or state senator agrees to take that on. Then I guess you could establish as a goal. But Chief Lilly's been involved with that. I'm guessing we've had 5 or 6 or more strategic planning since then, and they've gotten better and better and better from the standpoint of really focusing on what we needed to do. One of the things the fire department looked at was accreditation. Do we need to become an accredited fire department? And the board decided at the time with input and that strategic planning session that We don't necessarily need the certificates, we need to follow the practice. So let's don't spend all the time and effort to be certified necessarily, but let's follow the practices that get you there. And I think that was successful from my experiences, so that goes on. I don't know if our community services district in contrast has a strategic plan or not. I've never heard of one, but maybe that's something they could consider that would help them bring in the elements of the future. What are we trying to do in the future as opposed to addressing things that are current issues? Because you got to get past just current issues. You can't ignore current issues, but you have to think about what are we going to do in the future that will avoid those issues to the extent we can, and try to be proactive in providing the vision of what we're trying to do and the resources to accomplish it. And a pay-as-you-go county philosophy doesn't do it. We've got to put money in reserve accounts, and we've done that with capital. We've done that with a lot of things. So I think we've made some significant changes and turns in terms of the way the county operates in the last, 6.5 years I've been on the board, but that's a personal perspective. I mean, the public is what I want to hear from. Are they seeing any improvements in things? And we still have issues with permits and the issues that are really tough to deal with, but I think we're trying to address them as best we can. So,
John, I'll just address.
yeah,
You referenced your 33 years on the fire board.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm on the fire board
Yes.
now. And we are engaging in our strategic planning epic.
Good.
We did one a few 3 or 4 years ago, sort of the midterm update, if you would, mid update. But we're starting from scratch again. We're following SWOT principles again.
Okay, yep.
Identifying strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. And things change. What was reported 5 or 6 years ago was one of the goals was become internationally credited. Well, it's nice to get a nice certificate on the wall, but that takes time and effort, and we don't need another certificate on the wall. As you said, we go to those, they have high training standards.
Yep.
The best in the county, quite frankly, our firefighters, they are required to do 240 hours of training a year. Almost everyone exceeds that by 50 or more hours. They do a lot of volunteer work in the community. And that volunteer effort of the firefighters and our CERT program where citizens come in and volunteer their time. So if there is a major firefighter or there's an event, a fire or something, the citizens get involved. They bring water, they bring blankets so that people are being evacuated. They assist in that way. So we're trying to involve the entire community. And strategic planning, you have to have it. And what we are focusing more now on a 3-year plan, because a lot of our strategic plans depend on revenue.
Yeah.
And it's hard for any government agency to accurately predict where the economy will be 5 or 10 years from now. You can guess, and economists spend all the time guessing. Half of them are wrong and half of them are right. But we can focus on 3 years and have a good sense that even if the economy declines, property taxes decline, that takes about 1.5 years or 2 years to get blended into the system. So we're probably good for 2 to 3 years. And then we can adjust going forward if the economy continues to grow well, values go up, new developments, bringing new tax dollars, and we can adjust for that. So strategic planning is important. I know we're doing it at the fire department, so you guys started a good legacy, and you and the late Jim Hartley contributed to that as well.
Absolutely. And Larry Brilliant. I mean, there was a number of individuals that participated, but accolades to the fire department for opening the training center, because that was one of the other things that we talked about in strategic planning and put away in terms of impact fees on developments, and we got there. It's not totally complete, but we got it operational.
It took 20 years.
Yes.
It took 20 years to get there, but it had to start with an idea. It had to start with the fire chief, firefighters backing that idea, and the community backing it and buying into it. And there is going to be a opening. Mike, I don't want to take, are you going to address that? No, you address that under public safety, but I think the public, it should come from you.
Okay, we'll wait for that report. I'm going to close this segment out because I'm not seeing any more comments or questions. I didn't see any hands raised by anyone participating online, so we will update the information, send it out to you with the links.
I just wanted to tell you, a lot of this verbiage and stuff, a lot of that stuff we went over, and a lot of it has been changed.
Yeah.
So just want to let you know.
The work in progress.
Just want to say thank you.
You're
For
welcome.
having a strategic plan for the county that brings us all together. I know it's a lot of work and you guys are busy with a lot of stuff, but thank you
Oh,
for
yeah.
having it out.
And we've used a consultant MRG that's been really, I think, extremely successful.
Yeah.
His size, usually you get a lot of flower stuff from consultants and this consultant is pretty good on it.
He has, so
appreciate that.
he's
Thank
very
you.
focused. He used to be a CAO before his retirement. Yeah, in Yuba County, I believe it was, so. Okay, moving on to supervisor communications, number 5. Again, there's nothing new on the Central El Dorado Hills project. We still are anticipating having the first public meeting sometime before the end of this year. It looks now like it may be the earliest possible opportunity is probably the first part of December. We can't get too late in December because we all know there's holiday conflicts and everything else, but we're trying to work with our planning department to get that defined and when the public will have an opportunity to understand what proposed changes, if any, are included in that package. And some of them, my understanding, are still under discussion. So likewise, on the Costco project, EDH 52, we expect a full environmental impact report to commence in the near future. That's associated with the announcement of a notice of preparation. I talked to planning again today, and they're expecting that within probably the 2 to 4 weeks per timeframe that they will be putting out the notice of preparation of that environmental document. So all indications are it will move forward and be again available for public review as a full form of a EIR, a full EIR. Town and Country Village, likewise, they have produced their notice of preparation and that response period has closed. So again, we're expecting a full EIR to be on that project to commence in the very near future. So if you're interested in that Bass Lake intersection area, that would be important to pay attention to and participate as a public representative. California Department of Insurance, wildlife risk models and mitigations, and update of our new FAIR plans is scheduled for a briefing by the state on October 10th at 1 p.m. at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
So I'm gonna comment on this.
Yeah.
I've been working on this for a long.
So have I.
Yeah, Carter Laura beat him up 3 times in the phone because, what is a fair plan? It's not a fair plan at all. And one of the issues about giving these people discounts and stuff, well, the problem is, well, we gave you a 10% discount, but they raised the fees like 30 or 40%, then they're giving you a 10% discount. It's not right, is what it is. So these things it's been a big issue for me. I have a particular winery that's out of my area. John knows about it.
Yeah.
And they basically hit them with, they live in a high brush area. So they got hit with $104,000 from the fair plan. Their fair plan the year before was only $14,000 a year. Now they hit an additional $104,000. You know what it is? BLM land that butts up going. That's where the problem is. And so it's some of these issues got to be addressed with what it is, and they're not addressing them at all. I'll tell you that right now.
So we'll have a chance to hear from the state at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So I'm just hoping the public will attend and ask some questions.
You guys do attend, so spread it.
And they give us some follow-up information in terms of what's happening there. So I think we're all going to be interested in that. The last item here is the proposed county amnesty ordinance, and this has to do with unpermitted properties and our issues with code enforcement. That is scheduled to come back to the board on September 19th.
So I can talk a little bit on that because
Sure.
it's been kind of my worries and my baby because it's mostly in our districts. This impacts, and a lot of the people that, they sell their house or might be the 5th owner of the house. Then they find out that they get hit with an impact, that a permit that wasn't finalized or whatever by the previous owners, they could be the 5th owners. So this has been an issue that we're trying to address and fix this problem. So anyway, it's going to be very helpful. One of the big issues and complaints that I have is when they do these permits, even though that these houses are very, very old, they have to bring it up to current standards with solar and the sprinkler systems. And that's not fair to these people, especially if they're the 5th owner of these homes. And these were never put in prior to that. So that the cost impact of doing this is going to be very expensive. The homeowner is not going to be able to afford it, especially when you've got to tear down a lot of the sheetrock and everything else to put these sprinkler systems in to be able to do it. And then solar that was never required before on these zones. So anyway, that's one of the big issues that we're trying to work on. The state is trying to change it. It should be only for new construction only, not for previous homes. So I'll let you know.
Yep, so
That's
more
what
on
I'm
that.
working on.
If you have a situation where you've received a notice from the county, notice to correct because of improper permitting or whatever, this might be in a meeting that's important to you to understand what's being done. So Moving on. Nothing, any comments or questions at this point? Our leadership team progress report. So we always start with public safety. And I didn't see anybody from the sheriff's department on here, nor did I see CHP. So Chief Lilly, you and Chief Mo get to go ahead and fill us in on this. He's online. That's where I saw him. He's online, yeah. But if he has anything to add, he's certainly welcome to add it, but please.
Perfect, yep. So, good updates from the fire department. We, from the vacant lots, vegetation management perspective, we did finish clearing all the lots to our contractors. So, most of the properties that we had out there that were served notices of to clear their lots and did not comply, have been abated, including the Safeway lot that has generated a lot of conversation.
Great.
Those are all done.
That's
Great. I understand there might be one or two stragglers, larger lots that are very, very expensive to mitigate, and there's property owner conversations going on with just a couple, but for the most part, we're 98% complete there. We just had a whole week, even though there hasn't been a really rough fire season for us, it's been great. There have been a lot of fires lighting up in the Klamath National Forest, I'm up near the Oregon border. So actually, El Dorado Hills, we sent out, at one point, we had 8 people out, 8 firefighters out for about a 2-week stint there. Most of them are back. We did send one more out yesterday to go and help provide some medical standby at one of the fires. But for the most part, we've been out, and when we do that, we always maintain the same staffing levels here in our community. So we hire overtime and bring firefighters back when we do deploy firefighters to wildfires across the state. So we did have some activity there, but other than that, it's been a relatively nice, safe fire season. If that's such a word. Mentioned earlier, the director mentioned that on October 28th, we will have the grand opening of our training center. So we're really looking forward to that. It's a Saturday. We welcome you and your families to come out, bring your kids, a lot of activities. But that'll be from 10 to 2 on October 28th at our new training center in the business park. So that's kind of an exciting opportunity for us. And then the last communication I had is one that's a little more sad, but one of our board of directors, Jim Hartley, passed away unexpectedly. He was injured on October 14th of fall in his driveway, and unfortunately, he had some complications from that ended up passing away from that. So our board,
It
which
was September 14th, right? I think you said October, but
August, I'm sorry.
August 14th.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. August 14th.
Yeah,
I was
August
wrong too.
14th. So we're real sad. Jim was 30 years in the fire service professionally down in the Sacramento area, and my understanding, 26 years on the El Dorado Hills Fire Department. So just a tremendous amount of public service, a passion for the fire department, and married for 50 years, wonderful man. Gave us a lot of great stories of his old past. He was still really, really sharp. He really understood what was going on today and had a great perspective of the board. So he'll be missed, and what that brings us to is a board of 4. So we have a vacancy. So we publicly noticed the opportunity and looking for a new board member to come on board. Okay, so that's a thing. But by September 25th, we're looking for letters of qualifications or resumes to be submitted for an interested person that wants to serve on the board. And then in October on the 16th, in the evening, there will be interviews if you're interested in people that submit a letter.
So it's by appointment rather than election because of the timing when the election cycle is?
Well, no, we have, it's only goes to election if the remaining board does not appoint someone within 60 days.
Okay, all right.
And, yeah, given the timing, we feel that it's more appropriate, it will fill the seat until the 2026 election. So it's basically 2.5-year appointment.
Mm-hmm.
So we would hopefully get someone who wants to apply not just for 2.5 years, but is interested enough in fire service and serving the community. I'm on the fire board. I have no relation to fire. I don't have any family history as a firefighter or anything, no relatives. I got involved in the community when I moved up here. Actually, supervisor, I don't, not supervisor at the time. I said, where would you recommend someone who wants to be involved with the community and maybe contribute? He said, look at the fire department. So I started going to fire department meetings. I've been for 2 years. And then after that, I decided to run for board and got elected. It's very, I think, meaningful thing to do. It does take time. It's not just going to a meeting for an hour and a half at night. There's a lot of prep work you have to do, but it's well worth it. And I would encourage anyone who meets the qualifications. Basically means that you have to be over 18 years old, you have to be a registered voter, and you have to live in the El Dorado district, the El Dorado Fire Department. But if you want to get involved in community activity, whether you're retired and maybe have more time, or you're active and you want to contribute, I think this is a great way to do that. So I would encourage you to run, and I'm looking at all of you because you're the only ones here. So please consider it, or if you know people that you think might be interested, please
And the link to that application's on the website, right?
On edhfire.com, down at the bottom, you'll see the link to our
Okay.
information.
So Chief, would you also comment on our Office of Emergency Services at the county level and some of the
Sure.
changes that are ongoing there? Because I think it's important for the public to know that as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about bringing this one up. I was thinking about the innovation and the concept that you
Right.
mentioned in the strategic plan. So the Office of Emergency Services is run by the Sheriff's Department and here in the county. And there's been an idea that has been out there for a little while with our agency specifically and wanting to get, it's currently run by sheriff's deputies that fill in that role of trying to get a firefighter as well stationed within them in the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. Just to balance, there's different levels of skill sets and importance and that collaborative effort together, we put both together is very effective. Fortunately, the new sheriff was very interested in the idea and the Board of Supervisors have shown a lot of interest in the support. The CAO has shown a lot of support, both our supervisors here and, front and center of the conversation. And what we're looking at doing is putting a fire chief officer in the sheriff's office. That would be me, most likely from our agency. It still has to be ratified through the board officially in the next month, but my hope and expectation is that within the next 30 days or so, I would be assigned over there and I'll be collaborating with the sheriff's office. Really just, again, there's the Office of Wildfire Resilience. It's doing a lot of great work in that area. This would balance out a little more focus on the wildfire problem in the county, the overall disaster management from COVID to floods to snowmageddon to all those other risk factors and just kind of help from the emergency response to preparedness mitigation aspects, just to add that layer of knowledge into the sheriff's office. So really appreciate the collaboration that's going on and maybe hard to understand, but preparation and prevention of disasters will save lots of money for the county. And anything we can do proactively, it's always hard to measure what you prevented from happening that is bad, but we know that this is a good move. And I think it's good leadership and good vision that's being had by everybody on this point. So,
Excellent.
I'm sorry, is that the disaster council that you're talking about, or what is that?
it's a sheriff's office of emergency service.
That's actually very.
And the board has appointed one person from the sheriff's office gonna handle it. Before they would, just back and forth. There was only time when during the summer when we had emergency. Now there's gonna be a permanent person that's gonna run that.
I was trying to figure out, because I noticed there's a disaster council that started on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Had their first meeting, and I'm trying to understand the difference between.
So the disaster council has always been in place by the county charter, I believe. There is representatives from different groups identified that serve on that. I can show you offline. It's a great opportunity for other areas to kind of discuss the different hazard problems of the community and different risk factors. It takes time to observe.
It's got a long history of not being real successful in accomplishing what it was set out to do, in my humble opinion. So we're getting it refocused. Right, yeah.
I did.
I'm going to discuss the public safety. I think
Yeah.
there's one other thing we should bring up.
Okay.
If you may have seen something from the Lake Hills Fire Safety Council. They sent out an opportunity. They have volunteers who are trained by the state, and they will do a free defensible space inspection of any home or residence in Dorado Hills on the north of 50. I think that's where they're trained to do it. That's what they're announcing.
That's what I recall as well,
But if
North
you go
Highway
to-
50.
if You go to the Lake Hills Fire Safety Council and you want a free defensible space inspection. What defensible space is defined in really 3 areas. 5 feet away from your house. Basically, they like concrete, they can't burn, but it's removing shrubs that are too close. If you have ground cover, if you've got bark or something, you don't want bark right next to the house where you've got slats or wooden slats, whatever, because that burns, that goes up. So clear, put in gravel, put in dirt, whatever, but clear that 5 feet space. From 5 feet to 25 feet, that's when you trim the overhanging trees that are gonna, if they burn, are gonna drop the branch on your house and stuff like that. And then the 25 feet to 100 feet, that's when you make sure you cut the brush down. You want to limb up your trees. You don't want your trees, and you see them all along the roads here, where you've got the oak trees, the branches are going down to the ground. Well, let's get a fire going. Grass is fall. That catches the oak tree, then it goes up and the entire oak tree is gone. You gotta limb off your trees at 6 to 8 feet, so that if fire does get the brush underneath, it can't get up into the canopy, and it gets canopy fires, then the wind catches it and it goes from tree to tree to tree to house. So free fire defensible state fire my resiliency. And that also ties in, if you were, you said, to insurance. Because if you can show that your house has met fire, resiliency standards, you may be able to get insurance on other standards.
If you're part of a fire safe community.
Yeah.
Designation, you're supposed to be able to get a designated insurance discount. I've not seen that done yet consistently, but
No, it has
it's,
not.
it's supposed to happen here soon, right? So that's one of the reasons why the October 10th discussion is very important too. When is all this gonna be seen by the ratepayers and not just talked about at very high levels? So anyway, Chris,
What Tim was saying, that's countywide.
right,
Tim was speaking about what this council, your sphere of influence would be, Lake Hills.
Right.
Yeah. But I just wanted to emphasize it is countywide. The El Dorado County Fire Safe Council is I'm a board member of that. And we talk, we have reports once a month from staff. But it seems like what I wanted to emphasize was your role in the El Dorado Hills Fire. Tell them what you guys do as dispensable space inspectors, because I think a lot of people don't know that you're doing this.
Sure. Yeah, no, the El Dorado Hills Fire Department through Chief Johnson had a vision when he came here as fire chief to really, expand our role in the defensible space inspection category, wildfire risk reduction. We did partner with the county, again, another collaborative effort that's real out of the box thinking to where the El Dorado Hills Fire Department is providing inspectors, we're hiring them, training them, giving them vehicles, but they're conducting defensible space inspections on behalf of the county throughout the entire county, including into the Tahoe Basin a little bit. So it is something that we partnered with the county on through a contract. We get some reimbursement for that, but we do have 4 defensible space inspectors, and they're currently now active throughout the county, not just in the El Dorado Hills region here, but yeah, good collaborative effort, another focus on wildfire risk reduction, and really our current board of supervisors, they really had a lot of support and vision for trying to help with this problem that we all know exists, so good stuff.
Yeah, I just want to give a little heads up on Ricardo Laurel. I've had many 3 times in Zoom calls, and they gave me a set of questions to ask him. So he had the answers already. I didn't do that. I had my own questions I was going to ask him. And they said, you're very hard and difficult to work with. Well, that's too bad. Because I'm not gonna, so anyway, like I say, I beat him up 3 different times on these Zoom calls, and especially when it comes to the residents of El Dorado County, I want to get answers. I want to see what you're gonna do for us, because the biggest thing is, what are you gonna do to help lower our rates? Because our rates are way too high, people can't even afford to even live here anymore. And a lot of people have moved out of El Dorado County and moved out of the state because of the high fire insurance. They can't afford to live here. And not only that, a lot of them have lost their mortgages too, because of it. Because they can't find, insurance. So like I say, that's gotta be solved, and it needs to be completely restructured from the ground up, as far as I'm concerned, so.
okay, let's move on beyond public safety. And Lauren, I'd like you the opportunity if you've got stuff you have to do, because we know you're a very busy student, so.
You're busy, so.
Okay, so, starting off with youth commission, we appointed 4 new commissioners, not from District 1. We still have myself and, another senior from Oak Ridge High School who's, representing District 1, but, we have 4 new commissioners. And then also we started something that we're calling, high school site reps. Essentially kind of where this started is that Oak Ridge High School every single year presents I want to say around 20 or so really, really great applications, but we just can't take them on because we have so many Oak Ridge students who are already involved in the commission. And so we kind of created this new role on the youth commission where we can appoint several site reps to kind of help represent the school and also to provide input. Obviously the best representation for Oak Ridge High School isn't just to have 2 seniors. It would be nice to get some input from underclassmen as well. And so I think we'll be meeting with those students on campus to get their input, inviting them to some select meetings as well, and just to be able to expand the input and representation that the youth commission is able to provide. Also, from what I know is that the site reps are also going to be helping with the launching of our peer advocacy program. And so it just gives us more commissioners sort of to work with without having to expand or change the rules of the commission. And from what I know, we're also trying to get a site rep for Union Mine High School since we technically don't have a Union Mine High School representative right now. For Oak Ridge High School specifically, in leadership, we're doing a lot of planning for events this year. We have a lot of really ambitious officers, and so along with that, we're trying to do and expand a lot of student and staff outreach. Specifically, we're trying to improve the connection between staff and students, and we're trying to do that by assigning some teacher recognition and teacher acknowledgement programs and projects, as well as also trying to reach into a really specific student community on campus. We have a lot of acknowledgement and recognition for student athletes, but not as much for students who are involved in the arts or are involved with academics. Personally, I've definitely been someone who's fallen towards that academics category. And so seeing that I kind of have the opportunity to create some change on campus, we've been trying to acknowledge and help support a lot of those new clubs. Recently, I've been kind of working with our kind of environmental club called One Green Step and helping them launch a project that hopefully I'll get to talk about soon. But just trying to create a more inclusive culture that helps support all students, no matter what they're interested on campus. And then lastly, I don't talk about this that much, but I'm also on the Behavioral Health Commission. And we had kind of as their guest speaker last month was the community partners that are running the wellness centers on campus. They have several wellness centers on almost all the high school campuses in El Dorado County, as well as developing several for the middle schools. And so being able to see their presentation was just really interesting and really impactful because as someone who in the past 4 years has been done a lot of advocacy for mental health, and I'm sure Mr. Heidel remembers me coming in and talking about mental health when I was like a sophomore.
Yep.
It was it was a really great moment to be able to see how far they've come with the development of the wellness centers, and they were talking a lot about progress and also moving forward, trying to develop them at the middle school age, that by the time they get to the high school, not only are they comfortable with the program, but it's just more accessible, it's more expanded. And so I also, while I was there, I gave them some feedback and definitely some input on just developing and promotion accessibility and all that. But being able to just see the community really coming together about mental health awareness for students was something that has always been really important to me, and it was really great to see the community partners be able to be there. And then just finally, just hearing a lot of the conversation today about looking towards the future and trying to preserve the community that we have. I just want to say that I just feel so honored to be a part of this community and to be able to see so many people around here who really just want to develop plans and projects to be able to help create the same community for my generation. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Or I can't wait till you run for like judge.
Yeah, really.
I'll read it, I'll donate money.
Yeah, there you go. You got a fan club already. See, that's good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Very well.
So Bob, let's go with you and then we'll just kind of backtrack around. So
Well, yeah, that's a good transition, Lauren. One of the things that APAC is involved with right now is taking a fresh and independent look at environmental concerns with actual hands-on reviews of biological requirements, not necessarily looking at what the paid environmental experts have said, but really actually having an opportunity to do field research and get involved in actual studies. We have a couple of those now in work right now. And so if any of your students that you're aware of involved with environmental matters, let me know, because I'd like to embrace them, and APIC would like to embrace them, get them involved, because quite honestly, be able to have real world experience that you can point to on your admissions applications and the like, does make a big difference. And we can provide them that right now. And there are a number of developments that are going to be impactful that are being proposed right now. And in order to preserve certainly some of the biological integrity of Colorado Hills, what your students could do to help contribute to that information, those studies would be very impactful. So please report it out. Thank you.
very good.
Okay, as far as the rest of myself.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm gonna actually defer a lot of my stuff to Tim, because most of my concerns right now are actually related
Okay.
issues dealing with the PAC West specific proposal for basically 1.1 million square foot series of buildings dedicated to industrial warehousing. Seems very, very similar in some regards to Amazon. And we're indeed delve much deeper into that issue. There are a couple other, obviously, issues that you mentioned, John, earlier. Obviously, the Costco, the town and country are all part of the concern, but the District 2 concerns are basically those concerns relating to the business park primarily, and also the Monsanto proposals. And so the various groups within our communities are very active, very concerned about what's going to happen with our roads. Carson Crossing in Pacific is a very specific issue. Obviously, the Carson Creek Nature Preserve is also a very major concern, and the impacts of these development plans. So they're all tied together. And fortunately, APAC is just looking at that, and I'm going to just from that point kind of transition over to Tim into the APAC discussion.
Okay,
Well, that's a great.
run with it. Yeah.
All right, APAC, our next meeting is Wednesday, February 20th at 6:30 right here. It's a hybrid meeting in person, and hopefully we'll have the microphones working. We can have a Zoom participation as well. We really have two specific updates on our agenda. One is the Summerbrook development, and that's something that our chairman, John Digg, and I have been involved with for almost 2 years now. That development was approved by the Board of Supervisors with the condition that they put in a stoplight there. And that's always been part of it. Stoplights cost about $1.2 million to about $1.5 million to install, and then there's certain funds that have to be contributed to the county for the continuing operation and maintenance of those stoplights. Developer just came back and said, I don't really want to do that. I don't think it's necessary. The Department of Transportation, which had required a stoplight 20 years ago, said, well, we looked at it again, we looked at the new traffic patterns, we agreed they don't have to do a stoplight. Therefore, we suggest that the Board of Supervisors waive it. And John Digg and I looked at it and said, hold it. You have an obligation to the developer who's going to make money developing his land and selling a home. Put in a stoplight, costs $1 million to $1.5 million. The Department of Transportation says, okay, we don't need any more. And then, so we suggest that the Board of Supervisors just waive it and not collect anything. I'm going, hold it. You're just giving away $1 million to $1.5 million of funds that were supposed to be spent for stoplight or public safety. So John and I wrote letters saying we kind of object to this. It's like a one-way street. You're giving away money. You're getting nothing in return. You're granting a release from an obligation, and you're getting nothing back. So we've had some discussions and negotiations between the county and the developer. They have now come back and they propose to put in some street lights to better light that intersection area. They would be solar lights so that they would not be dependent on PG&E. They would have batteries and stuff like that. We do think that it contributes to the better public safety of that stretch of Green Valley Road where it's located. And so we're just going to get the final update on that. But I think APAC is probably going to go ahead and make a recommendation that that's a good compromise that meets the purposes of both sides. Our second big issue is, as Bob just mentioned, is the Creekside Village Pacific Plan. That's for about 950 homes. It's on a location which would have been the project Frontier, the Amazon project. They were originally planning to do that. Amazon came in and said, hey, we'll just buy the whole piece of property from you. We can get it developed. The Amazon thing dropped away. So we're back to Carson Creek, 900 homes, 900 plus homes. Some of them are 150 acres of single family low density house, 21 acres of single family medium density residential, 14 acres of parks, and 46 acres of open space and 10 acres of roadways. Since the development has come back on, the developers have been meeting frequently, I believe, with the various homeowners associations they have, and reviewing Forest Stevens, Heritage, Blackstone, I believe, has been involved because any development of this size affects traffic, it affects the environment. And as Bob said, a lot of developments that are going on, every development has some environmental impact. It's just a question of how much and what is the proper mitigation in place to allow the development to proceed. So those are the two items we have. We'll get updates on other projects around the county. And as we've known in this county, even though today is the 11th and our meeting is on the 20th, a lot can happen in 9 days because new projects come in all of a sudden without any advance warning. So if anything new comes in, we'll get it on our agenda. We'll have a brief discussion on it.
Very good. Thanks for that report, Tim. George, is there anything else you wanted to say in this?
Well, I just want to say that when I was down in Yosemite and then the Committee for Natural Resource, that basically I spoke on good forest management, and that's stuff that we haven't had for a long time. But you got to understand it also impacts our watershed too. And what has happened is basically when we have that density of trees and stuff like that, it's in the canopy and it doesn't get to the ground. So what that water does evaporate is what it does. So we don't have the snow impact that we need to be able to support the water for our county. So that's one of the things I talked about. And I talked about good forest management is not 500 trees per acre, but like 75 or 80 trees per acre. That's what it should be. And the problem is a lot of people don't know, but one ponderosa pine draws 10 gallons of water per inch. So if it's 12 inches in diameter, that's 120 gallons of water per day. Now, what happens during drought seasons is what it is. It might be 130 gallons per week, 140. So what happens is when you have that high density of these trees, basically the trees die. So then we have a problem with fires, these horrific fires and stuff, and it impacts these communities. So there's a lot of things that needs to be addressed, and we need to manage our forest like we manage our gardens. You weed your gardens, right? And we need to do the same thing, and we haven't done that for decades. So we need to get back to that. And bringing a mill back in the county would be a great thing for us, especially supply good, workforce and plus high paying jobs. And that's what we need. And some of the other issues in Cameron Park, the issues with the drainage problem that's been going on for decades down there. So we have an engineer that now that's through the water agency and stuff that we have put in place. And they're mapping out all the drainage problems to fix that problem. So we can ask for money to be able to fix it, because it's been an issue for a long time, especially with all the flooding and everything that was going on this last winter. But this has been going on for 40 plus years. Being a longtime resident myself, I know that a lot of that stuff that it just was proper, it was improper planning is basically what it was for decades. So we need to map that out. One of the biggest issues, like Bob, I always keep him informed of what's going on in El Dorado Hills. So he appreciates that very much, especially with what's happening with a lot of the projects and stuff. So I think we're working for Grizzly Flat. You heard about what I'm doing there with the new community center. So actually they actually gonna lease the property. It'll be 5 acres, but they were gonna give us 17 acres, half of the 20 acres. 3 acres was gonna be the school. But eventually maybe we'll have ownership up there, and then the South County Alliance will basically have the ownership of it. And that way we could use it for other things too. So especially what we're looking at is a new resiliency building, a fire resiliency building out there, which would be a great thing, because then the whole community and other agencies and everything could be able to use it. So anyway, there's a lot of things I've been doing, a lot of, I keep pushing and pushing and pushing, especially the fire insurance. It's a big issue, and especially the amnesty program, especially those poor people that are suffering right now, impact with a lot of these fines and stuff. So it's just not fair to them, especially being a fifth owner of a home, and they're hit with all these fees, and they got to bring their homes up to current standard. It's just not fair. So anyway, a lot of things going on.
Okay. And going back to the public safety aspect, there was things that came through my office talking about concerns with the repaving on Green Valley Road and also the repaving of Cameron Park. I don't know if you want to report on Cameron Park at all.
The biggest thing in Cameron Park, I'll tell you Green Valley and whatever, but the problem is with the striping issue that's going on, and I don't understand. But the biggest thing, I reached out to Rockdale, the biggest thing, the reason why they haven't restriped, because they're trying to finish up Pleasant Valley Road and Bucksbar Road, so they can have this striping company come in and do it all, because it's cost effective to have it do it one time instead of piecemeal it. So that's the reason why it's been delayed. So I just want to let you guys know.
With respect to Green Valley Road, what I understand is it's done as a 3-layer repavement process. The first layer has been done. They have to let all that cure. They come in and do the second layer. That's why they've got the tabs out there to try to mark proximate lane boundaries, but not restriping. Because if you restriped it, you'd be restriping it 3 times, the first layer, the second layer, and then the final restriping, right? So they're trying to be judicious with putting out the tabs to give you an indication where your lane is. And what I just ask people to do is slow down, because it's easier to see those tabs and stuff and understand where your lane boundaries are if you just take it a little bit slower. And when you're in a construction zone, that's what we all should do, is respect the fact that it's a construction zone. So it's a process of being upgraded. We need to slow down and be attentive to what's going on. So as I understand it, the second layer of pavement for Green Valley Road is supposed to happen within the next week. And then there's a third layer to follow that. And then everything will be restriped and made pristine again. So it'd be very, very clear definition, but where you see issues with the tabs being blocked off, and I suspect some of that may be people impacting them because they're driving a little faster than they should. And they knock the tabs off and then we have to retab it. But please let DOT know if you don't feel comfortable driving there, because they can go out and establish more tabs. But the restriping is kind of that last step we do after the 3 layers are done. Cameron Park Drive is probably a little bit different, but we just ask for everybody's patience and indulgence and slow down a little bit. And I think we'll all feel a little bit safer about what's going on during this construction period. This is a construction season for roadways. I'm sure we've already all experienced delays somewhere. It's just one of those things that happen. But if when you see those construction signs or you're in a construction zone, just drop your speed a little bit and just be more attentive. And I think everybody will get by it safely until we get the restriping done.
Right,
But,
right. Also Sand Ridge Road, right now, they're actually grading that Sand Ridge, and the ground up blacktop is gonna be going on that. So, and then it'll be, they'll have a seal coat over it. So actually, Sand Ridge Road will be, instead of the dirt, because it's very much washboard, you only use 25 to 30 miles an hour on that road. So anyway, that's being taken care of, and they're actually fixing some of the dangerous corners that is out there right now too. So anyway.
very good. So Cindy, why don't you give us community information and outreach?
Okay, the farmers market is continuing every Sunday at Town Center until the end of October. And that is every Sunday from 8 to 1. The El Dorado Hills CSD is having their final big summer fest bash, their concert. It's on September 16th. It's from 4 until 9:30 p.m. They're gonna have a DJ, live music, carnival, face painting. They're gonna have a petting zoo, rock climbing, beer and wine gardens, food and dessert trucks. So that it's a big event. So that's coming up on the 16th. September 30th is the 3rd annual triathlon. It's a TRY-athlon. It's for kids with special needs and up to age 22, and they're invited to participate. It's adaptive swim, bike and run event. And that's at the El Dorado Hills CSD and their pool there in the field. And October 4th, there's a party bark. It's a bark BQ instead of a barbecue. It's for people and their dogs. It's first time they're going to try that at the El Dorado Hills CSD from 4:30 to 6:30. It'll be right kind of outside where that dog park is, and they're going to have free food and music and canine oriented activities. So something new.
Very good.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Richard, where are we with our charter review committee?
Well, Charter Review Committee is at the end of its term.
Yep.
I would start out by saying, thank you to certain citizens in the community who stepped forward to speak to the committee. And I would especially mention the Taxpayers Association, which continues to look at different things, and they were very useful, successful in bringing issues forward with factual information and continued dialogue. The committee had a certain degree of difficulty in formalizing how to do outreach to get public awareness and interest in what the committee's function was. And I think we did some things that maybe for the next committee at the next term when it's appointed, they could take advantage of. So I've said that. Fundamentally, we have formalize the final report. It will be presented to the Board of Supervisors, which are all recommendations, and it will be on September the 19th. There are 4 recommendations. One is to change term limits for members of the board from 2 terms to 3 terms. There's no question whatsoever, and this meeting just further demonstrates it. It is a very sophisticated, challenging, and difficult job. Testimony from prior supervisors supported the fact that it takes time to be able to become up to speed. And oftentimes they're very near their end of their terms, and the citizens lose a lot of valuable knowledge and experience. Second recommendation is that one of the members thought was appropriate, and it's more linguistic in the charter than anything else, and that is to further emphasize the importance, if a board member wants to have a meeting held in their specific supervisorial district. Third recommendation that was really advanced by the Taxpayers Association had to do with requiring a very clear mandate that the agency and department heads submit to the board during a duly noticed meeting, public meeting, an updated strategic plan for their agency or their department, reflecting departmental accomplishments by year and the department goals for the ensuing years. It was felt that while some of these presentations were being done, their content and their effectiveness maybe left more than a little to be desired. And the last recommendation has to do with a section in the charter that benchmarks the salaries of the sheriff department's employees and the history as to how it occurred. And the fundamental benchmark is an average of the Amador County Sheriff's Office, the South Lake Tahoe Police Department, and the California Highway Patrol. And there's really no documented sense as to why these particular agencies were selected. And it's also very contrary to the philosophy expressed in the CAO's letter to the board regarding how the employees employees' salaries are assessed across a wide band of similar positions in other counties. And in attempting to track the logic of this and the complexity of the law enforcement salary structures, we're recommending that the county use resources to review the 3 comparator agencies and determine if those agencies remain the appropriate for the determination of the sheriff's salaries. The committee did not have the resources or frankly the expertise to delve deeply into that, but the preliminary information suggests that bluntly, it was probably created to win the support of the Deputy Sheriff's Association back in the 1990s. And that may just been what was done. So that's it. And the report will be made by the chair on the 19th. 2 other matters relative to good governance. A matter onto the board's agenda tomorrow, item 23-1639, has to do with a $1.5 million contract relative to the Sheriff's Department maintenance and support for its helicopter. When I think this information was initially presented as to the need, I'm not sure all of the details and expenses were as clearly presented as now may be coming forward. And I think it's appropriate, and coming from a law enforcement background, I think it's appropriate to have accountability as to how these very sophisticated and expensive devices are used and whether they are justified in the expense that they bring to the particular department. And then as a certain amount of irony, also on the board's agenda is the approval of a contract for a addition to the county jail. And I think it's kind of interesting that state funds and county funds are going to be used to fund nearly a $40 million addition at the same time while the state is shutting down prisons. And to me, it is quite an oxymoron here to say that we need space to house prisoners, but we can't house prisoners in space we have. So it's like Baby John said, there are certain state issues we cannot engage with, but the illogic of it all kind of befuddles me.
So I've studied that subject a little bit. There's no additional beds associated with the expansion. It's really ADA improvements and
Yeah.
creating cell space that's appropriate for females. Because the mix of people going to our jail has changed substantially over the years. So it's like $37 million to make those improvements and not increase the number of beds. But we have $25 million of state funds that if we don't do it, we lose. And we're non-compliant already. So it's one of those things you're betwixt and between, but
You know, John, I will make a comment because what they are is taxpayer funds.
yes, they are.
And we tend to want to call them this agency's
Yeah.
funds or that agency's funds or what have you. And it all comes out of our pockets.
Totally agree. They're grant funds that were provided to the county. So you either exercise that or you pass it over. So. Yep, no, very well done. Thank you, Richard. Yeah,
Makes me promise that one, I certainly think probably the biggest alternate member.
Yep.
Again, there were a lot of people that were involved. The taxpayers union were there every month, every meeting, and contributed. For the most part, it was ignored by the public. Unless you had the taxpayers there and they were advocating for certain things, or if you had county government officials who maybe their roles or questions were being challenged or addressed by the Charter Revision Committee. No one showed up. There's maybe the last meeting we had, other than the staff, the 5 members and the 2 alternates, no one was there. So I think it's a good thing that we maybe get more interest next time. It does call to me. We were told basically that 2 of our recommendations that the county's JO's office thought was unnecessary, and they would probably, and their recommendations, get the board that they reject those recommendations because they were unnecessary. I think maybe they're trying to protect their own interests and more so than protecting the interests of the citizens of the county by those recommendations. So I'll just preface what you're going to hear in 10 days. And I know David's going to be there, and I'm going to be there. We're going to make public comments probably as well. And I think the other thing is, and I'll make this in front of the full board, is we are one of 13 counties out of 58 in California that's a charter county.
Yeah.
The remit or the what you wanted us to do from the board, Charter Revision Committee, did not actually say we need to be a charter county. So we didn't go into that subject. But that's a subject I really think should be addressed. Why are we a charter county? What benefits do we get from being a charter county? A lot of the other charter counties are bigger, like San Francisco, which has that unique city county government structure that's unique to them. But Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, we are a smaller county, and maybe a charter makes us more unique because there's certain things in that, particularly Section 504 with the sheriff's pay, that's unique to a charter. But would we maybe be better off as a not a charter county, but a losing the term, governor,
general law, state general law.
general law. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And then I think that's something that you guys would have on the board would have to decide whether you want county council or some other group. I say another ad hoc committee to take a look at that. And then finally, what Dick mentioned, and that's a helicopter. When the previous sheriff wanted a helicopter and there was funds available, you guys, the board of supervisors approved it. Take a look at that again. If you recall, the reports that were made indicated that when a helicopter is needed in El Dorado County, 90% of the time, there was
CHP,
another
yeah.
helicopter from either a state, federal, or another local agency that was available to cover the needs. And I think if you get 90% coverage in anything, that's pretty damn good. And for the cost that we are spending for the purchase of the helicopter, the salaries for helicopter maintenance and technicians, helicopter pilots, maintenance, stuff like that. You take that 3.5 or $3 million a year, or whatever it is to run it. The sheriffs could have a public safety official, a school officer at every high school in the county, at every middle school in the county. And I would argue that those funds would be better spent on school safety by having a designated sheriff's officer at each middle school and high school than having a helicopter that's only needed 10% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
So, and I probably won't be able to make the meeting tomorrow because I've got too damn many meetings to do already. But,
Understand that one too. So,
yeah,
all right. Kathy, please.
I think that PG&E's got a helicopter. I heard them over my house. I'm pretty sure that they've got it. So in the spirit of being good stewards of public funds, First Light El Dorado is a tobacco tax recipient, and we are required by state law to produce annual reports and annual audits of our work, and that is what we are doing this month. So it's a report from First 5 in the process of conducting our annual audits and have our evaluation report to boost the public that are on the First 5, as you know from last month, is the collective impact leader to create community hubs. And that is a way to maximize our existing services in this community so that we can get out in front of what's going on and helping folks connecting to services. And as part of that, our next phase, or what we're currently working on, is we've been putting our navigators in the hubs, and our next phase is to coordinate all these new mobile units. So there's a mobile unit for health out of the El Dorado Community Health Center. There's going to be an immunization mobile unit that's coming out of public health. There is going to be in the next 6 to 8 months, behavioral health unit. And what's important is that we schedule these out in such a way through our libraries and in our communities so folks can depend and access on them. So we're working with the library and other health and human services to put together an MOU so that we can create a schedule and we have access to water and bathrooms and electricity, et cetera. So that's the next evolution of community hubs that we'll have. 2 other things that I wanted to share, and you can probably help me out on this. I see on the board's agenda tomorrow that Olivia Byron Cooper will finally be appointed as our Health and Human Services Director. I think that's a big deal because we've been vacant. With an interim director for probably 17 months now. So we want to celebrate Olivia stepping into that tomorrow. And I also saw today that Dr. Matthew Minson is the new public health officer. So these are in high-level health and human services. We've had a lot of vacancies in the past, and so it's nice to see that department rounding out. And I also heard there was a deputy director, but I didn't catch the name. I was like, that's the one I was gonna ask you. I think I heard a deputy director. And
Yeah, I don't remember the name offhand either, but I
But
could
they
get you.
did. So
Yes,
leadership
right.
is complete at HHSA as of tomorrow. So
Well, actually, there's one open spot.
Is
The
there?
the
Yeah.
director, yeah, I think,
Is
yes,
Olivia gonna be the director then?
Olivia is the Director of Health and Human Services,
But
right?
the public health director.
Right.
Got it. So one more vacancy.
There's one more vacancy, and so we're trying to encourage one of the applicants for the Director of Health and Human Services position from another
take that
county to
position.
consider applying.
That'd be nice.
So, because again, I think she was a very talented individual. It'd be great to have her in our county. So we are trying to do that kind of a recruitment thing. We can't just give them, they have to apply, right?
Absolutely.
To be eligible. And that's really why it took 17 months.
I'm
In
just
part is it's tough to get good applicants. So,
Absolutely.
but
I'm
we
just
got
super
there.
excited we're getting there. I mean, if
Yes.
there's someone who wants to collaborate and leverage our resources, maximize what we have in the county, I'm super excited that we'll have leadership that we can start to work with. So thank you.
Yeah,
For getting that
certainly.
in place. And Hub Day in your district will be on September 20th, and this is when community hubs and other public members are coming to help the community at Pioneer Park. And then there is a food giveaway at the Hills Church in El Dorado Hills. There'll be one tomorrow, and then also on the 26th.
Very good. What you talked about a little bit with the mobility and First 5 and hubs and stuff, that's another category of strategic innovation, in my opinion. And thanks to First Five and other organizations, we won a statewide recognition award through CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, as being a example for other people to follow in how we were providing innovation and using our libraries as public health, behavioral health hubs, and taking the services to the people as opposed to requiring them to come to Placerville or South Lake Tahoe. So huge accomplishment. So, we are making, I think, really good steps in the right direction. We just
Thank
need
you. I
to
appreciate you
continue
saying
that.
that. You're talking about the strategic.
Yeah.
plan, And I had to think back, that's when I first met you as a community member.
Yeah.
Before you were a supervisor.
Exactly.
You both sat on the health
2016,
committees,
right?
I think.
Yes.
And that's when HUBs first came into existence. And I appreciate you saying that because I think that it is our goal to innovate in government. Oftentimes in small counties, we get small pots of money, especially when it comes to health and human services, and especially for prevention. And if we don't find ways to couple those funds together to be really have a maximized impact to the community, we're not doing the best we can with those dollars. And so I appreciate that. That is our goal with community hubs, is to be able to revision our health and human services and put the services in the community and have the upstream.
Yep. Excellent. So Chris, will you want to give us a report on the
Yeah, I was gonna tell you.
planning
that
commission? Yeah.
There is no planning commission meeting Thursday.
Okay.
It was canceled because of lack of items. When we have a planning commission, we have typically 2 to 3 items. Our last meeting that we had a cell tower that was in the what they call a Tiger Lily area of Pleasant Valley Road.
Yeah.
That would be east of Diamond Springs. That was approved by us. It fits into the network there, and it's a strategic tower of a good location. But also I wanted to focus on the broadband discussion that you board had on your last update, where they said that area there was one of the deserving areas of getting an upgrade.
Yep.
That's fiber, the last mile.
Last mile, yeah.
Okay. The second item we had was the cannabis farm on South Shingle, which there was some pushback from the school district in terms of they did a nice job presenting their side of it. What it came down to was bus stops and whether or not a bus stop is the same thing as a school or, excuse me, where you're selling the cannabis products, dispensary. So I think your board may see something on appeal. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I got a sense that on a 3-2, it was approved. So that's not very definitive in terms of support. So it may go to maybe your.
So it's really setbacks of where a public entity is, a school, a bus stop, from where a cannabis grow might be, because the concern is youth and being interested in going and visiting things and getting over fences and whatever. So that's
sides,
really.
I was gonna say, both sides did an excellent job.
Right.
Presenting their side of it.
Yep.
So it was really, really tough. So that was the 3-2 in favor of the farm. The last one was, come on, Chris. Pickleball.
Pickleball. The never-ending subject, noise from pickleball.
That took us probably the longest of any of the items. It was the last item, and it was not a pickleball in terms of we want to bring it. It was a pickleball in terms of an appeal to pickleball at the lake.
What state it was at Cameron Park.
Yep.
Cameron Park Lake.
Lake.
And it was an infrastructure improvement that the Cameron Park Community Services District made to convert, I think, tennis courts to pickleball courts. But there's a substantial difference in the noise level associated with those two sports.
And you're talking 12 feet away from the house.
Right, so it created a new problem.
Created a lot of problems.
That was a 4-0 in favor of the appeal, and the pickleballers were not happy.
Well, they want more playing opportunity, right? Not less.
Well, in fact, they're
But-
gonna put a pickleball court, I think it's in Pioneer Park, they're looking at that, and also Lions.
Right.
So that was the report, that you asked for in
Yep.
your.
Under the infrastructure. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I think I have one final one to cover, and that's economic development. We are still working to get our CDAC quorum established. I understand there's a new appointment being made out of District 3, which should allow us to have our quorum.
Yeah.
So we can continue that discussion. George and I have been on an ad hoc committee to try to restructure, reconstitute the way CDAC has operated in the past with new membership. But we needed, progressed to the point, we've got a lot of creative ideas, but we needed to get back to the CDAC group and say, these are our ideas. Here's where we think we want to go with this. What are your comments, to make sure that we close that loop before we move forward and make a recommendation to the full board. So hopefully we'll get something here done by the end of October, if not before. But we had a little slip there because of the lack of being able to get a quorum. So any go backs by anybody? Been a pretty full evening. Thank you for your patience and attendance. I'll just mention that our next meeting is Monday, October the 2nd, right back here. And our guest speaker will be Judy Aragati. She's the president of the El Dorado Hills Arts Association. She'll be discussing their first annual El Dorado Hills Fine Arts Festival being held at our El Dorado Hills Library. So again, a connection with our hub. So we'll look forward to hearing Judy's presentation and encourage members of El Dorado Hills and other areas who are interested in fine arts to attend that event. So that'll be a good one. Yes.
Did you see where Maria Alvarado Gill is having her office, ribbon cutting?
Yes,
Yeah, we already know about.
that's in October. Yes.
No, I didn't know if the public knew that.
Oh, yeah, well,
I don't think it's a wide announcement. That's a pretty small office.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a really small office. So I think it's,
see it.
I think it's by invitation only type of deal, but the
Okay.
public will have another opportunity, obviously, to visit it.
Okay.
Cause yeah, I've been
I
in,
guess that's important to
it's,
know.
it'll be a dedication by the board. of
if
supervisors.
you were ever in Tony Mansour's office in the business park, that's where their office is, where
Oh,
Tony
yeah.
used to sit. And his-
Oh,
Yeah, it's that small.
small.
Yeah. His conference room area and stuff. So anyway.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you again for your attendance, your participation, and look forward to seeing you back on October 2nd.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a team event. That's what it,